It's another big week of new releases with some charming hidden gems spread across survival, RPG, photography, platformers and more, so let's begin with WiZmans World Re, a classic turn-based party-based JRPG that is the remaster of a cult classic from the early 2000s last seen in my video on upcoming indie RPGs, with enhanced 2D pixel art and sound that modernizes the original, while keeping its tactical roots intact. Recruit and evolve 3 distinct homunculi as you explore towns, dungeons, and world full of secrets, with an emphasis on narrative progression, choices that affect how relationships with companions develop, and tactical depth in combat, where I just love the pixel art, so I have to give it a mention. Menherarium is a deck-building roguelite with a psychological twist where survival is literally a gamble. You have to survive for 7 days, playing a blood-staked dice-rolling gambling game against a Menhera character, which translates to an individual struggling with mental health issues whose rules and moods can shift daily, forcing you to adapt or get overwhelmed. It does, of course, follow a trend of games like Needy Streamer Overload and Me-Side, with a cute but probably antagonistic character as the main focus, with a dose of Balatro for good measure. This video is brought to you by EverSiege Untold Ages, a hero strategy roguelite that seems to be taking inspiration from MOBAs, in which you control a hero character and have to fend off sieges on your base, but eventually have to go on the offense to break the siege. Choose from 5 powerful war gears or heroes, each with a signature weapon in bow, daggers, axe, sword and shield, or lance, also having co-op support, so party composition and builds matter. You can use elemental essences to create diverse spell builds, and even summon elite troops and lead them into battle. As you push back the forces of the evil master, your bastion or home base can be upgraded, adding over 38 types of buildings, so you need to balance between defense and economy as you build up the strength needed to take on the enemy. Maps are procedurally generated with evolving enemy factions, and there's also a time travel ascension difficulty system as you find ways to beat the evil master across multiple timelines, with sleek modern visuals and looks fun, so if interested, try the free demo on Steam, wishlist the game, and buy it when it releases in March 2026. ASTROBOTANICA is a first-person open-world survival crafting game set on prehistoric Earth where you play as Zell, an alien botanist stranded after a crash landing, forced to rely on scientific knowledge rather than brute force to survive in a hostile environment where your main problem is that you cannot breathe oxygen. Survival revolves around studying and cultivating ancient flora, extracting nutrients, crafting tonics, and engineering solutions to sustain yourself while adapting to the toxic atmosphere. Farming and experimentation with plants are central systems, with these eventually feeding into functional resources for base building and equipment upgrades. You construct shelters, research technologies, and gradually expand your operational range while interacting with Neanderthals through healing, trade, and cooperation rather than combat. Wildlife, environmental hazards, and resource scarcity adds tension, but the core loop leans more into a curious sort of experimentation, with this being an early access release, as most survival games tend to be, but certainly has potential. Under the Island is a top-down action-adventure RPG clearly inspired by 16-bit era classics, where you play as Nia, a young adventurer trying to uncover why Seashell Island is slowly sinking into the ocean. I love the pixel art and visuals with a vibrant color palette with 6 distinct regions to explore, environmental puzzles to solve, and dungeons packed with strange enemies ranging from tunneling wolves to bizarre plant creatures. Combat mixes melee attacks with artifacts and abilities you unlock along the way, having to be a little bit strategic about how you approach each encounter rather than just mashing through them. There's also a social layer where you befriend islanders, rescue lost animals, and take on side missions that flesh out the world beyond just dungeon crawling, so if you love 2D Zelda games, then this will be of interest. Love indie games? Sign up to my newsletter to get a weekly dose of what's hot, along with some news and of course, weekly game giveaways, so if interested, link is in the description below. Placid Plastic Deck: A Quiet Quest is a story-driven card RPG spin-off of Placid Plastic Duck Simulator, being an actual game instead of effectively a screensaver where idle ducks float in the pool, where you play as a teenager trying to fix a fractured friendship through the unlikely art of competitive card battling. The core loop blends deck building with light adventure elements, where you explore locations, talk to eccentric characters, and build a personalized deck full of very on-brand ducks and bizarre support cards. Battles play out in turn-based encounters, where positioning, card synergy, and managing your hand actually matter, with dialogue choices influencing how characters respond to you, shaping the tone of interactions, while new cards and upgrades gradually expand your strategic options. It keeps that trademark offbeat humor with a proper tactical card system, so if you love the Pokemon TCG game on the Game Boy Color, you might want to give this a look. Other games begin with Baking Bad, an action survival sim with a chaotic twist where society has banned sweets and carbs, and you've gone underground to bake forbidden treats, forcing you to build and upgrade a customized kitchen inside an RV and hustle your goods across a patchwork of cities while staying ahead of the law in a world that looks equal parts absurd and tense. Combine ingredients to cook up a huge variety of recipes, then sell them to eager buyers while managing your blood sugar and reputation with different factions, adding this odd layer of survival management on top of the core cooking loop. The driving and evasion segments with the police does seem absurd, looking like an interesting mix of ideas, with extra points for the pun in the title. Dead in Antares is a turn-based survival management RPG from the developer of Dead in Bermuda and Dead in Vinland, this time set on a hostile alien planet where a crew of specialists has crash-landed after Earth's last colonization mission goes off the rails, where survival depends on how well you manage resources, people, and environmental hazards. You lead a roster of 10 unique characters with interlinked personalities and strengths, balancing their needs for food, water, mental resilience, and energy while exploring fractured landscapes, gathering supplies, and repairing and upgrading camp stations that let you craft tools, improve weapons, analyze unknown items, and expand your sphere of operations. Turn-based tactical combat will be required when hostile threats appear in expeditions beyond the crash site, with each character's power surge abilities and class upgrades giving you more options as encounters become tougher. Relationships matter as well, with bonding and rivalry influencing teamwork bonuses, looking like an interesting evolution of the core concept of this series. Dobbel Dungeon is a roguelite turn-based tactical RPG centered around dice-driven combat and party strategy, where you lead a party of 3 heroes rolling dice at the start of each turn to decide what actions you can take before you even step into battle across a series of mysterious islands gripped by a powerful curse. Each hero has their own skill tree with unique abilities, passives, and modifiers that let you tailor how they contribute, and you find artifacts and items along the way that add new tactical options or augment existing skills, with careful choice of dice and equipment often making the difference around tougher opponents. Procedurally generated encounters push you to adapt builds on the fly, using dice outcomes to power movement, attacks, and support effects rather than relying on random hit chance. The almost claymation-looking art style and characters look awesome and very unique, so if you love tactics titles, this should be a good one. After a little bit of a delay, we should be getting the launch of Forgotlings this week, a cinematic action-adventure platformer set in a magical realm where all the things that have been lost and forgotten take on life and purpose, casting you as Fig, a once-forgotten posing doll and captain of the sentient lightship Voyager, who must unite 5 fractured Forgotling tribes to prevent their world from unraveling. In this hand-drawn semi-open world full of windswept ruins, forgotten cities, and mystical landscapes, you explore by air and foot, engaging in real-time combat, stealth, and diplomacy as you decide whether to persuade or fight to unite the tribes. A unique mechanic is the in-game board game Ina, said to be a cross between chess and Go, which is used to ease tense confrontations through wit rather than steel, and dialogue choices directly shape relationships and outcomes as you build trust with each tribe. This is from the developer of Forgotten N, which sports similar Gorgeous hand-drawn animations and art with thousands of meticulously crafted frames, along with a full voice cast and an evocative score featuring a renowned choir, where this game has been in development for 5 years and a lot has gone into it and certainly looks to be high quality. Hold the Mine is a roguelite survival strategy game that drops you into the depths of a long-forgotten mine, where every day means digging deeper, collecting precious resources, and fortifying your base before night falls and waves of monsters surge in with gruesome determination. During daytime expeditions, you direct your dwarf through the mine with a limited number of expeditions, mining multiple blocks in sequence and uncovering resources that feed into building an expanding network of powerful structures with unique effects and synergies that boost defense and gathering efficiency. Free trapped heroes hidden deep underground and strengthen them with mysterious ruins and exotic fruits to unlock new abilities and increase stats that are crucial when dusk arrives and the cursed hordes rush the mine's entrance. Strategic placement of buildings, clever resource allocation, and choosing which heroes to empower feeds into every defense, where you can also activate powers at the right moment, which can mean the difference between victory and defeat. Horripilant is a sick-looking incremental dungeon crawler RPG built around idler, puzzle, and auto-battler systems, where you awaken as a battered knight, lost in the darkest corners of a forsaken underworld that feels like a living nightmare. Advance floor by floor through a brutally long dungeon, fighting horrific foes and mining materials that contribute to gear upgrades, crafting, and character progression as enemies grow more sinister, and every boon you pick up comes with a burden you need to manage. Combat weaves in resource management with incremental systems where careful decisions about gear, boons, and when to push forward or pull back can determine how your run unfolds, with strange cryptic puzzles along the way as well, where the unsettling atmosphere is very well done and is the hidden gem of the week. Insider Trading is a roguelite deck builder that turns the stock market into your playground, casting you as a trader with a unique strategy and a deck of cards that influence how prices move and how each run unfolds. In each run, you draft and refine your deck, then use your hand to push prices up or down, timing buys and sells to hit weekly financial targets while juggling risk and reward as the market responds to your choices. Cards have distinct effects that can reshape market conditions and your strategy, and perks and pills picked up between trading hours adds layers of customization to your build. There are different playable characters to unlock, each with their own starting decks and quirks that nudge you towards different approaches, encouraging experimentation with combo synergies and risk profiles that feel fresh each run, and is something different in this space. Key Fairy is a hand-drawn action-adventure game with a pacifist bullet hell twist, throwing you into a surreal forest where monsters, strange folk, and forgotten gods drift asleep in the wilderness, and you play as a small, lightfoot fairy, using a grappling thread to weave around threats, collecting shattered stars through graceful movement and pattern reading rather than brute force or combat. The game feels like a dance with danger, where each encounter is more about positioning, rhythm, and weaving through frenetic attack patterns. There's an almost folkloric energy to the world that pushes you to explore every nook and interact with curious characters, while the stark, stylized art and atmospheric presentation gives this a whimsical but tense vibe. A first-person open-world survival game is Life After End, set in the brutal post-apocalyptic frozen wastes of Siberia, where every hour feels like a struggle against the elements, starvation, thirst, and the very cold environment itself. You scavenge for food, gather materials to craft weapons, medicine, and shelter, then build and reinforce those shelters while managing your physical state, weather exposure and hunger, because illness, frostbite, and fatigue are all real dangers that can end your life. Hunting wild animals, fending off rival survivors, and securing limited resources form the backbone of the progression loop, with an interactive environment that lets you block passages, barricade windows, and use the terrain for defense or ambushes as you see fit. Animal companions like wolves or bears can become powerful allies or unpredictable liabilities, and the weather and physical conditions constantly push you to make choices about how you survive, looking a little bit generic, but people do love their survival games, so perhaps give this a look. Love Eternal is a psychological horror platformer where you explore a surreal castle built from bitter memories, playing as Maya, a child ripped from her family and trapped in an uncanny labyrinth of gravity-bending trials that feel like a nightmare you cannot wake up from. It controls like a precision platformer with over 100 handcrafted screens full of spikes, lasers, switches, and traps, and you can flip gravity mid-air to navigate through the twisting architecture of this strange domain, so momentum and timing are as important as reflexes. The pixel art is simple, but it works, with the overall horror vibes being immaculately done, so Celeste this is not, but I'm quite intrigued by the horror elements. Obliterator-X is a brutal roguelite tower defense game that mixes survival scavenging with real-time action, dropping you into a scorched outback-inspired wasteland where mutant hordes rush you while you build, blast, and improvise your way through every run. Every attempt begins with a short scavenging phase where you explore abandoned buildings, loot weapons, turrets, traps, and schematics, then decide how to fortify your position, assign combat drones, and shape your defense before the waves begin. It's comically bloody with gyps all over the place, but does look to be of interest to fans of the genre. Dying doesn't end your journey, since you can use acquired resources on upgrades that gradually expand your options, unlocking and upgrading HQ buildings, and progressing up skill trees across combat, defense, science, and resources, and does look fun. Seclusa is a casual photography simulator that blends relaxing safari exploration with sandbox progression, dropping you into a cozy, secluded lodge in East Africa where you pick up your camera and chase wildlife across scenic outlooks or simply unwind by the fire while the world moves at its own pace. In this laid-back experience, you'll snap photos of animals, complete photography jobs, and wander diverse environments that range from golden plains to shaded forest edges, using earned credits to improve your camera, buy lodge amenities, and unlock cosmetic and functional upgrades that subtly change how your shots look and feel. Every area is handcrafted to feel immersive and calm, with ambient soundscapes and a gentle soundtrack, adding to that sense of quiet exploration. And while you can actively pursue assignments or level up by fulfilling simple daily jobs, you can also toggle into passive mode and just enjoy the vibes, tinkering with weather and time of day to get that perfect shot in this very chilled out photography experience. A not so indie title is Star Trek Voyager Across the Unknown, a story-driven survival strategy game that lets you take the helm of the iconic USS Voyager as it drifts far from home in the Delta Quadrant, juggling ship management, crew welfare, exploration, and narrative choices as you try to bring the vessel and its crew back towards friendly space. You have to balance ship systems like life support, power distribution, crew assignments, and research facilities, while exploring sectors of space for vital resources, deciding when to repair, upgrade, or restructure critical systems, and adapt to environmental anomalies that could spell disaster for morale or your survival. Away missions and ship-to-ship encounters add tactical decision points on top of the broader survival gameplay, where choosing who to go on a mission or how to approach a diplomatic situation will affect your current run, even if it means risking iconic crew members in service of a bold gambit. The game does also explore what-if scenarios beyond the scope of the original TV series, like embracing controversial tech or pursuing unorthodox paths, which is supposed to be fully fleshed out, definitely being of interest if you are a Trekkie. Strange Brew is a cinematic, absurd horror 3D platformer where you play as a man in the mascot costume of Joe the Duck, the character of a coffee chain, sprinting through environments swarming with zombie hordes in an attempt to escape. The action is relentless, with intense pursuit sequences that feel like zombie movies as you dodge, leap, or use environmental hazards to slow, smash, or zap the undead before they overwhelm you. Gameplay also leans into playful use of tools, since you can toss coffee beans to lure or distract enemies, and clever use of explosive barrels, collapsing structures, or electrified traps lets you turn the environment against the hordes while you desperately flee towards safety. Scenes shift between unlikely set pieces like warehouse raves, runaway monorails and nuclear sites, all carrying that over-the-top absurdity that mixes screams with laughter and looks like a fun time. Styx, Blades of Greed is a third-person stealth action-adventure that brings back the sneaky goblin Styx with a bigger world, more tools, and sandbox-style missions with its trademark humor and cunning approach, where your main objective is getting your hands on quartz, the most precious and dangerous resource in a fantasy realm on the brink of war between elves, humans, and orcs. Now, this is not an indie game since Cyanide is a big studio, but stealth games are relatively difficult to come by, so I thought I'll give it a mention. You explore sprawling vertical environments that let you creep, climb, and approach objectives from multiple directions using invisibility, decoys, and environmental traps to evade or dispatch guards while mastering traversal tools like grappling hooks and the glider. A branching progression system lets you emphasize either stealth-oriented Ember abilities or the more aggressive quartz-based upgrades that change your approach, offering some replayability with the sandbox nature of the levels, perhaps giving this the same kind of potential as a Hitman game and looks very good. Super Battle Golf is a chaotic online golf game with simultaneous play for up to 8 people, where everyone tees off at the same time and the objective is simple: swing, shoot, sabotage, and hustle towards the hole in a free-for-all rush that feels closer to a party game rather than a traditional sports simulation. Courses are packed with hazards, obstacles, and items that you can collect and use both offensively and defensively, smacking rivals with your ball, ramming them with a golf cart, or even deploying hilarious weaponized tools to throw them off their game while you make your way across every map. There's a strong emphasis on social competition along with cosmetic character customization options to make your character truly yours and should be fun with friends. A spooky deck-building card battler is The Killing Stone, one wrapped in a 17th century occult horror narrative where you step into a dark world of demons, cursed bloodlines, and high-stakes bargaining against the devil himself, all centered around the titular ceremonial board known as the Fangela, The Killing Stone. Explore a haunted mansion in the remote Arctic, interacting with afflicted, cursed family members and their animal familiars, while collecting cards, spells, and creature figurines that you take into ritual combat against a series of demon bosses. The combat system requires strategic card placement, a reserve mechanic that lets you stack boons and banes above the battle line for tactical play and ritual wagering that can tilt a run in your favor or plunge you deeper into peril, with each choice having permanent consequences for the soul you are trying to cleanse. Narrative integration with the card battles gives it a layered feel, and the gothic occult theme really carries through in both art and atmosphere, where non-roguelite deck builders are an interesting trend to watch as well. The Last Citadel is a roguelite, role-based third-person shooter where you and your crew explore the enigmatic citadel suspended above a black hole, where every expedition promises mystery, danger, and high-stakes survival against ever-changing enemies. The layout is procedurally generated in every run, so explore, fight, and find new gear and artifacts while engaging in brutal encounters against colossal guardians. You need to understand attack patterns, position yourself appropriately, and work together with your team to be successful, using active abilities and picking from an assortment of weapons to cover your bases. It is an interesting mix of ideas, leaning in the science fantasy direction, so guns with monsters and black holes, looking a little bit like an MMO and could be interesting. This one's for indie game developers. The free indie game marketing resources are ready, so sign up via the link in the description below to get it in your mailbox. Niva Prologue was announced during the PlayStation State of Play showcase and is already releasing, being a paid DLC that serves as a prequel to the beautifully crafted side-scrolling world of Niva, following how our heroine first crossed paths with the wolf cub before the events of the main game, with a focus on deepening that emotional bond rather than just revisiting the same beats. Set in corrupted swamps full of danger and mystery, our heroine chases a trail of white butterflies into hostile wetlands, where she then encounters a frightened wolf cub and must earn its trust to survive together, facing distinct regional challenges, new enemy types, and intense boss encounters that feel a little tighter and more focused than the broader open areas of the original. This will include 3 new locations with unique mechanics, along with their signature gorgeous art, and while a prequel is supposed to be more challenging than the base game and looks like a worthy addition. Seal Chain Call of Blood is an action roguelite with a unique item linking mechanic where you form chain reactions by linking items together, and when placed in specific formations, these items create powerful seals that grant special effects across runs. Set in a collapsing world shrouded in evil and cursed monsters, play as a spirit medium, scavenging gear, weapons, armor, and skills while pushing through randomly triggered events, enemies, and escalating danger as you experiment with combinations that shape your approach. Each character has distinct builds and playstyle potential, and the way items enchant or resonate with each other turns loot into a kind of meta puzzle game where stacking effects and planning formations becomes critical. Between runs, you can add points to talent trees, making you stronger for subsequent runs, and looks like a well-made one of these. The game that just might make some waves this week is Demon Tides, the follow-up to Demon Turf, which sees the return of Beebs and her crew, and is now an open-world 3D platformer where you sail the vast oceans around Ragnar's Rock, exploring dozens of unique islands, leaping across structures and chaining together an expressive moveset to unlock how you travel, fight, and puzzle through every location. You race across open seas and islands with a momentum-heavy jump, dash, and glide system that is built for you to attain a float state, as you find creative routes through the challenges and perhaps beat the leaderboard times. Uncover secrets and find items that modify how you move, with talismans and collectibles expanding your abilities to give you even more options. Developer Fabras has been going at this for a long time, where I'm a fan of their 2D precision platformer Slime Sun, so here's wishing them all the best. On paper, Norse Oath of Blood is one of the most anticipated titles of the week, coming to us from technically independent developer Arctic Hazard, even if they do have a larger team, and is a turn-based tactics RPG set in Viking Age Norway that mixes base management, narrative choice, and strategic combat into a saga of vengeance and survival as you guide young warrior Gunnar after his father is brutally murdered and his people scattered. Build and grow a fledgling settlement from the ashes, managing farmers, craftspeople, and warriors. Forge alliances with neighbouring clans and expand your warband's reach while exploring unforgiving terrain filled with opportunity and hostility. The turn-based combat emphasizes positioning, elevation, and unit synergy, with each warrior wielding unique skills, and has upgrade paths that can be customized through gear and training to suit how you prefer to fight, and add to that environmental hazards and flanking bonuses, and you have the potential for quite the strategic title. Kill the Witch is a hardcore 2D pixel art action platformer where you play as a baseball bat wielding witch, smashing through waves of bizarre enemies in a mostly linear series of stages with intense boss encounters. From the moment you start moving, jumping, and rolling through each level, you'll feel that enjoyable hardship that the developer talks about, where timing, spacing, and anticipating enemy attacks matter as you use your signature abilities like the home run and transformation in intense combat. It is set in a hopeless world where humanity has given up on happiness, but the witch says F that and smashes everything instead, looking to have fantastic action. Watch this video for more upcoming action platformers.